You see a kid getting shoved into a locker. Another kid that sits alone in the library during lunch. A wallflower at a party who's likely asking themselves what they're even doing there. And someone hoping their crush will notice them, while also wondering why the school douche gets all the attention. These are types of people that director Mikhail Red would classify as a dead kid. The movie Dead Kids centers around a teenage group of these social outcasts who plot to kidnap their rich and popular classmate, not only to gain money by holding him hostage, but also to get back at him for his wrongdoings towards them. Through this film, I think Mikhail Red actually implies that the term dead kid applies to more than just a stereotypical high school loser. Affecting even those higher up in the social hierarchy, the term rather applies to anyone suffering from social alienation. Alienation is defined as the state of feeling estranged or separated from one's milieu, work, products of work, or self. Although the idea of alienation is an ambiguous concept, we'll look at a few examples of how the movie takes on alienation's most common forms: powerlessness, meaninglessness, normlessness, social isolation, self-estrangement, and cultural estrangement. Powerlessness is the feeling that one's destiny is not under one's own control, but is determined by external agents, fate, luck, or institutional arrangements. In Dead Kids, we see from the start of the film that our main character, Mark Santamaria, lives a lower-class lifestyle. He rents a living space owned by his aunt that he and his mother struggle to make the payments for. Even by going to the lengths of violating academic integrity and doing other students' homework to make some money, Santamaria's living situation remains hanging over his head by his aunt. And she doesn't make it any easier for him, as she constantly berates and pressures him over every little thing. In hopes of a better life, Santamaria dedicates himself to his studies to get into his dream college. Yet that goal also enforces his powerlessness, as his future lies in the hands of the college. When he receives mail from them and reads what turns out to be a rejection letter, defeat and lack of control are written all over his face. This lack of direction connects to the next variant of alienation: meaninglessness. It is the lack of comprehensibility or consistent meaning in any domain of action, such as world affairs or interpersonal relations, or to a generalized sense of purposelessness in life. Throughout the movie, we see that many characters struggle with a lack of inspiration. Their academic work ethic is poor, and they're unfamiliar with ways to motivate themselves. In the boys' plan to kidnap Chuck, we see that, at least for Paulo and Uy, that they don't have any meaningful intentions with the ransom money. Their goal to spend their cut on the same modest model of car shows that they would rather not put the money towards something more grand and symbolic, instead defaulting towards materialism. And even with the consumerist pursuit of a car, Paulo and Uy don't aim for a luxurious sports car, but settle on buying an unassuming Civic. They don't comprehend that there are laws in place with serious possible punishments for plotting a kidnapping, regardless of how they spend the ransom. Their risk wouldn't worsen if they were to think outside the box and set their incentives much higher. The next variant, normlessness, actually applies to the group's target, Chuck, and it goes to show that being a dead kid isn't reserved for just the stereotypical social outcasts. Normlessness is the lack of commitment to shared social conventions of behavior, hence widespread deviance, distrust, unrestrained individual competition, and the like. Having grown up rich and enjoying life as a cool kid, Chuck asserts his own will onto others, disregarding any rules or conventional behavior. He parties on school nights, he audibly pays no attention in class or to his extracurricular activities, he bullies his classmates, and he frequents a sex spa. The film does try to add some justification to Chuck's experience of alienation by revealing that he gets some sort of therapy out of visiting the sex spa. Although he engages in deviant behavior, he struggles with his own daddy issues, which may perhaps be the cause. Nevertheless, this vulnerability isn't explored past a few lines. It reminds us that even though Chuck's character may not be simplistically bad, overall he shouldn't be paid any mind to gain any sympathy that would absolve him of his wrongdoings. And back to our main character, Santamaria, two more variants of alienation can be applied to him: social isolation and self-estrangement. Social isolation is the sense of loneliness or exclusion in social relations. And self-estrangement is the understanding that in one way or another, the individual is out of touch with himself. While not necessarily unknown to or disliked by his peers, from what we know, Santamaria rarely hangs out with anyone for fun. He becomes acquainted with Blanco, Paolo, and Uy when they include him in their plot to kidnap Chuck, mainly because they need him for his apartment, which he lives alone in. Paolo has already met and interacted with Santamaria, but primarily for Santamaria's homework racketeering. The group is able to convince Santamaria to join the kidnapping by suggesting it could be a form of revenge against Chuck for cock-blocking him from his crush Janina. While Santamaria does meet up with Janina to rehearse the script for their school play, he feels isolated when it comes to the idea of hanging out with her in a separate and less formal social setting. It seems Chuck is directly at fault here by inviting Janina to his gatherings and simultaneously preventing Santamaria from joining, while teasing him relentlessly. But we can also say that Santamaria's isolation is also a byproduct of his self-estrangement. While Janina pushes Santamaria to join in on activities, he always excuses himself by ambiguously saying that he has something he needs to do. Besides working on other people's homework, it's likely that he's not actually attending to anything else important, such as looking out for his own personal and emotional well-being. It's within himself to put more focus on socializing, but he struggles with his priorities, ultimately coming off as distant. As Janina disappointedly tells him, "You are never a dead kid. You just don't know how to live." The last variant of social alienation is cultural estrangement, the sense of removal from established values in society, as for example, in intellectual or student rebellions against conventional institutions. I think this form of alienation heavily applies to Blanco, who carries himself like a revolutionary. Undeniably the leader of his group, he delivers grand speeches to his comrades, treating their scheme like a battle with their lives at stake. Although he's the son of a cop and has not experienced any devastating hardships, he suffers knowing that his father has been dragged into corruption. Blanco's true motivation for the kidnapping is to get revenge on the crooked institution, because they had metaphorically kidnapped his family first. Interestingly, Blanco brings up a quote from the Communist Manifesto, describing the situation as they carry out their plot. "We have nothing to lose but our chains." Amusingly, Blanco seems to formulate the slogan on his own without knowing who Karl Marx is, but Marx coincidentally had his own relevant theory of social alienation. His theory goes that by living within social classes at the mechanistic level of a worker, a person becomes estranged from their humanity. Through systematic labor, they have no control over their work, their relationships with other people, and their access to the goods and services that they themselves produce. And so they lose their self-worth and lack meaning in their life. The Communist Manifesto posits that historically, societies take the form of an oppressed majority exploited by an oppressive minority, creating a struggle that ends in a revolution. Dead Kids warns of a failed attempt at a revolution. The group is misguided because they're not participating for the same reasons and they don't mesh well together. They can identify the areas that they need to work on, but still they fail to cover them and poorly execute their plans. Although the Communist Manifesto describes a majority fighting back against a minority, the boys push themselves away from each other emotionally, and so they really stand no chance fighting back against anything on their own. By not knowing how to properly deal with their frustrations over the course of their lives, they lose themselves and become alienated. Ultimately, in trying to find the smallest sense of control over themselves, they turn to violence as a last resort. But that too ends up a futile effort and even backfires on them. As a consequence, they only succeed in materializing what they already were: dead kids. Thank you for watching my overview of social alienation in Dead Kids. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. Comment below with any ideas you had about the film. Until next time.